Honorable Lieutenant Governor, friends on the dais, lords and ladies of the seas, welcome to a discussion on the Commons. After the Admiral's learned, detailed and very intense examination of UNCLOS and the various challenges that are ahead, I thought I would concentrate instead on throwing up a few ideas for examination over the next 2 days, to see whether we can learn a little by shifting the perspective through which we look at the same objective. India historically has been seen as a landmass. We talk of India as a land, we think of India as a land. It certainly has the size. It is its land size as well as its historic wealth that has attracted a whole series of people who desired to come and conquer our country, most from Alexander downwards and perhaps even before, the Persians. But I suggest to you that if you look at India as a land, you see one map. But if you look at India from the perspective of the sea, you see a quite different map. As a land, you see India's size. But when you look at it from the sea, you see India's reach. And India's reach is quite significantly different from India's size. Its reach extends from the Gulf to the Malacca Straits. And that encompasses far bigger in terms of strategic space than you might imagine if you really continue to look at India as a territory. Let me also begin by asking a couple of questions of the average Indian. I know that you in this august audience know the answers to both the questions. But if we ask an Indian in Delhi or Indian anywhere else, how far is India from Indonesia? I doubt if anyone would say less than 100 kilometers. I clearly doubt. I couldn't think of anyone except probably somebody who's excellent in quiz to come up with that answer. And yet, when you come here to Port Blair, and you know that if you go south of Port Blair, that is precisely, it is less than 100 kilometers from Aceh. And Aceh is a very, very interesting part of Indonesia, which all of you know, with things happening, the turbulence going on, what the implications might be. How far is India from Singapore? And once again, the conventional answer will be imagined, oh, it's a 5-hour flight. Not true. From at least one point in the Andamans and Nicobar, you can, on a clear night, see the glow of Singapore lights. If it's a 4-hour flight from Delhi to Port Blair, from the southernmost point, it would be probably just half an hour, 45 minutes to Singapore. So when, if you ask anyone in India, he thinks only of Sri Lanka as a ocean neighbor. But that's not true at all. Indonesia, Singapore are part of our ocean neighborhood. And that is the challenge as well as the strategic embrace which India has to deal with. The truth is that we in India are also still searching and have not quite found our sea legs, as it were, when it comes to a strategic doctrine for our ocean neighborhood. It is a work in evolution. It has to be. Sea, psychologically for the Indian, means distance. Land means proximity. Land is terra firma. Sea is uncertainty. These are psychological facts which affect our thinking of these critical issues. While thinking about what to say, I was reminded of the textbook as a child, which showed the first, sort of Darwin for idiots. And it showed a fish crawling out of water and the species evolving into human beings. We might indeed have come from water, but man has become very much a land creature. Man's economy is heavily land-based. Whether it is the agricultural economy or the industrial economy. Man's culture is very land-based. Our whole thinking has become extremely land-based. I mean, you look at language, and overseas is somehow far more intimidating than overland. Overseas means somewhere, you're moving towards mystery. When you may return, you don't know. Land, of course, is something that we have always sought to control and have actually controlled. By the way, I just read that it is actually perfectly possible to go around the world in 80 days. Last week, a British cyclist completed a round the world journey in less than 80 days, 79 days. So we have found our ways towards handling the crevices, the challenges, the problems of land. But sea still remains something that the whole world actually is continuing to grapple with. And that is why UNCLOS remains the first significant treaty devised for the seas. And UNCLOS really is a late 20th century, 21st century happening. At best, the sea has been used as a hunting ground for food. Our own history in India, I've often wondered, when did the switch in our thinking take place till there came a time when it was almost forbidden to go overseas. Because certainly the Indian narrative includes a vast interaction with Southeast Asia. As all the temples, the language, the relics, one of the most fascinating things I've seen in my life is a museum near the Angkor Wat temples. And the inscriptions in Sanskrit there, huge stone inscriptions. And this is what has been left, by the way, after the ravages of history. We have no idea how much has been lost. So there has been a huge interaction, and this interaction could not have been only a land, it wasn't only a land interaction, it was interaction towards the sea. But the one thing which is quite remarkable is that the use of seas in ancient times, if we consider 2000 years ago, 1500 years ago to be ancient, was that it was essentially peaceful and productive. There is no history of a sea war or a sea battle before Europe arrived in our vicinity. And in fact, the seas became part of strategic space when Europeans arrived and created and used the seas in order to expand first their influence, then their domain, and then their dominion over the lands. One of the, again, a very interesting fact of our country's history is that we have never been invaded from the east. In fact, the very first people who conquered India from the east were the British. And then, of course, they took the time over doing so, because the British form of conquest was based on the fact that the defeated must pay for the victory of the British. So they used the money of India in order to expand their territory in India. But the fact remains that irrespective of the regions, we never put any strong strategic thinking behind how to protect ourselves from the seas. There must be many reasons why, and better people than I can look for them. But that remains a fact. Even the last of the empires, which is the Mughal, had very strong armies with its coalition of alliances with Indian princes. Never had anything closely similar to having a navy. The first person, to my knowledge, who actually understood the strategic importance of the sea and what was the grandfather, I've forgotten his name, but the grandfather of Sirajuddaula. A very wise man, the last effective Sultan of Bengal, who actually said that the Hacks, he used to call the English the Hacks, he said the Hacks would take over the ports, then they would rule the coastlines all across, east and west. And after they had taken over the coastlines, they would squeeze India and take it over. And that, in fact, he was saying this, long before the Battle of Plassey. And that exactly is what happens. My only interesting thought at the subject is that the one strategic mistake that I think his name was Alawardi Khan. The one strategic mistake, only critical mistake he made was to believe in dynasty. If he hadn't made Sirajuddaula his heir, history yet might have been different. But dynasty is one of the biggest problems in history, in our history. You choose the wrong dynasty and you end up somewhere else. Once Europe brought the sea into strategic space, and this happened about 500 years ago, the map of the region actually swiveled and changed. Because the map has to be seen. Ask anyone interested in defense, they will tell you that the map of any part of the world has to be a dynamic. It cannot be a rigid map. Because a map has to include an element called capacities in order to examine prospects and challenges. In fact, the first people to arrive with such strategic thinking were the Portuguese. And the Portuguese might have actually made this their prize conquest, because they came at a time similar to the British, when there was a real vacuum of power across most of North India. But they came in 1498, they came in 1510 between Vasco da Gama and the first estate in Portugal. And if in 1526 another consolidation had not taken place in the north, the Portuguese might easily have stepped into the vacuum, as the British did a few centuries later. But once the conflict between essentially a sea strategy view of India and a land strategy of view of India began to take place, eventually the sea strategy view of India prevailed. And we did not, as Indians, know how to deal. The good news is that at last India has recovered from both sea phobia as well as myopia in terms of its strategic thinking. And today, it is a very important part of both the economic and the strategic management of the oceans. Today, conceptually, we are already looking at not just the Indian Ocean. I mean, just as an aside, there has to be a reason why the only ocean, why only a country, I mean, India is the only country which has an ocean named after it. But the management and our thinking has already stretched beyond the tensile strength of the Indian Ocean, and we think of now the Indo-Pacific waters and the Indo-Pacific space. And indeed it is. Water has no boundaries. One of the problems that we are going to face as we keep exploring or looking at possibilities is this notion of the maritime boundary. Water demands fluidity, not only fluidity in fact, but fluidity in thinking. And the critical question that will emerge, because today we have discovered two things, or three things. One, that the seas have more wealth in them than land. And once you introduce human beings to wealth, you can't stop. You can't stop them from trying to seize it. But the seas today have more wealth than land. They have more energy, not simply the energy of gas and petroleum, but also the energy of waves, the energy of water, the energy of wind, all of which will come to play. And it is, I don't think I'm being very fanciful when I say that the 21st century is going to be the century of seas, skies, and space, not of land. Seas, skies, and space have no boundaries. The space will include cyberspace. It is going to be a critical fact of this century. The seas we are already familiar with. And the skies are going to move very quickly above the law of gravity. There are, at this moment, very serious options. I mean, they have moved away from theoretically. We all know that this could happen because once you've got your mission to the moon, you've done it. But to turn the mission into the moon and the principles that took your mission that far, escaping gravity, are now being applied to ordinary transport. Now, why should they not be? If ordinary transport is going to be applied, then you're going to be able to reach from San Francisco to Delhi in a couple of hours. So the strategic command of space, the communication command of cyberspace, of skies, as well as the seas, is really going to determine who will be in control of this century? And those who dominate today should not imagine that the domination will necessarily continue. Because this is going to be a century which is going to be completely energized by new ideas and new capabilities and new technologies. And technologies are a creative part of the human mind. They are not going to be bound by any particular inheritance or job. And certainly, I claim with a great confidence that India is going to be a major player in the technology field and in the ideas field and in the new dimensions that we are looking at. Therefore, this conference and many more like this, we will have to address the central question of this century. Shall the seas, the skies and space, can we make them shared space, or will they become zones of conflict? If we cannot find the capability to make them shared space, then conflict is almost inevitable. And once conflict comes for the kind of resources available in all three, that such conflicts can either be horrifying or they can lead to totally different forms of domination, which itself will then create collateral damage, which we will have to deal with then. I will only end by saying that our government has made it very clear, our doctrine, as we examine the future, but the philosophy behind our doctrine is there must be freedom of skies, there must be freedom of space, and there must be freedom of seas. That means this must be shared space. Sitting beside the rather calm sea in front of the hotel and watching in the evening the tide begin to rise, I could not help but think of the never to be forgotten Shakespeare. And there is a tide in the affairs of men which when taken at the flood leads on to fortune. But if it is not taken at the flood, it will lead on to great misfortune. But I hope with thinking going on and with such a collection of minds, we find a way towards fortune. Thank you.